Hey, what is up, everyone? It's Rich. All right, welcome to me reading your replies. It's funny, you got 3 thumbs downs yesterday. Thank you all for the extra thumbs down. It was at 4 yesterday, and I was actually surprised. Um, so I shot a video yesterday, and 3.5 minutes into the video, my audio mic somehow disconnected. It didn't literally disconnect like completely, like the cord fell out. I would have obviously seen that, but my USB port has a little bit of wiggle room, and somehow it just disconnected, and I was so bummed because it was a long video. I went through a ton of the comments, and unfortunately 3.5 minutes in, it was gone. So anyway, let's get to this. I was going to read the comments, and it ended up being a very, very educational and informative video, as this one will too. So what I'm going to do is, the last time I read them from newest first, so I'm just going to start at the bottom, so at least starts off a little fresher for me, and it'll have a different vibe, because it's impossible when you lose a video like that to really just reshoot it right away. I think that the spontaneity and all that just is gone. So all right, so let's get to your replies, and we'll extrapolate from there, and it'll be a really good video. So sit back, draw, and listen to what's going on. So you're a very accomplished artist yourself. I think it's inspirational. You're constantly seeking further education. Bravo, Richard. Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll hit on something a little later that will expand on this idea, but I do appreciate it, and I am always trying to learn. I love learning, so that is definitely something I do. I think Jim struggled with this for so long because he fell in love with the quad. If he had reworked that a bit, I think the rest of the leg would have resolved itself. I think every artist can relate to this. Yeah, every artist is different, though. And he's saying, it's sort of like a house of cards. You start moving one thing, then other things don't look right. So, man, this revelation came to me watching the very same video months ago. I thought, if Jim is doing it, I can do it too. Yeah, it was weird because I used the example yesterday that I was watching some Proco videos while I was working, and same deal. He was going over Loomis heads, and I was like, oh, that'll be interesting. You can always draw heads better, so I figured any little tips to set up more complicated poses, why not? And same deal though. He doesn't really erase, and so you could see how someone like me, who especially as an inker, just by job description alone, really kind of has to nail the lines just right the first time. And you see videos like that, and it can kind of slowly over time, you just you think that that's the way that you need to do it. If you're not able to do your sphere and your setup lines and draw the nose with charcoal kind of on a first pass, well, maybe you don't really understand it that well. So someone said artists are paid to draw, not erase. I had read some of these. You can see where I thumbs up them. So what ended up happening was my videos never get this many replies. I mean, honestly, I would say the average is maybe like 4 to 13 replies. For whatever reason, there's just not a lot of engagement in the reply thing. So like later in the day, it's easy for me to pop back in and kind of see what's going on. But this started to snowball, and I was like, oh man, like, what is going on? And I hadn't read any of the comments. I still haven't read most of these. That someone was clearly not an artist. Yeah, I mean, you'll get a lot of information online from people that know a lot about art but really have never worked professionally. It's like I would be more likely to take any kind of artistic advice from someone that had been working for at least 10 years, because it gives you enough time to have some great successes and also challenges along the way. But yeah, I think and this is maybe the story. A lot of this stuff goes through the rumor mill and sort of grows exponentially over time too. So we've actually known each other online for like 10 years. Sean Norton Art. Okay, crazy how time flies. But you actually are a big part of my evolution. I used to never erase either, and then realized I need to not be afraid to just adjust until I get it right. Ryan Benjamin says, never be afraid to start completely over. If things aren't working, do it until you get it right. Yeah, and see, it's interesting. So when Ryan came in at Wildstorm, it was a little bit different, and I think Jim actually worked with the artists more directly. And being an inker, I may not have experienced the same attention that even incoming pencilers got, um, like during my time or slightly after, because I kind of consider myself in the third wave. Ryan would have been in the first. But that is how Jim, always has worked. Is he'll just rework stuff until he gets it right. So, you know, Ryan is from probably like that educational track. Okay, so yeah, he keeps redoing the leg, but what I think is wrong is the position of the thigh. Yeah, so there you go. I heard Kirby didn't erase. Of course, he was trying to nail insane deadlines and workload. There's a video of Kirby drawn on YouTube, and it's shocking to see how slow and deliberate he was. He apparently just had an intense focus and spent a supernatural amount of time drawing without a break. 3 to 5 pages a day in the Marvel era are just incredible. He didn't have to. He was too good. Some guys need to erase and others don't. I don't think most the guys who need to erase. Sorry, I'm like there's noise going on outside. Ever get to the point where they don't need to? Uh, they are doomed to feel their way through the process. Yeah, I used the example in the other video that, like in the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, I think John Buscema shows 4 examples of ways that you can draw. And mine, hands down, is the super scribbly, messy one. I'm super reckless when I lay stuff out. But I think it's actually a good thing, and I'm really, really fast. But with that, I eat shit a lot. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to backtrack. It's like I just try to nail it. So it's just one of those things. It's nothing to be proud of, I assure you. I had that realization a while back too. I would watch streams of an artist I like and notice that he would erase a lot during the initial sketch stage. That's why the key is to keep it loose during your initial sketching phase. You won't be afraid to erase if you quickly, right, exactly, if you didn't spend a lot of time on it. And it was interesting too, I thought, how Jim would go through like he set up the figure loosely, he created kind of a light source on it, the big forms were in, and then at the very, very end he rendered it. And what I would probably do is when things started to look done, I would probably be tempted to start rendering it and deciding light sources sort of at the same time. So that's not a great idea. I think his methodology is pretty like the passes that he makes sense to me. I had issues with erasing when I was starting to learn, working with 80-gram paper, copy paper. There's only so much boost, yeah, the paper can take, and then it took me a half hour more to get a figure underlay. So it was all a question of whether erasing minutes of work is valid value proposition, if you will. I recently got back into comic book style scribbling again, and I'm still hesitant with erasing. I got faster, but I'd rather redo the sketch than erase. Okay, and I can hit on an argument I saw online a few weeks ago, but I'd rather redo the sketch than erase when it's not that serious, then later redraw the image in full render. Professionally, in design work, if working traditionally, similar to your inking, it's preferable to be economical with line strokes, and hence we were trained to stick with ballpoint pens and fine liners. If you have a problem, draw another in the sketch iteration phase, since variety is valued more than polish. Then later spending. What was interesting is Eric Kennedy. I remember when he went into he had worked in comics. He got out of comics for a few years and was doing mostly storyboards. And when he came back, he would say, like, I don't have the patience to draw finished drawings anymore. So, it could be a level of that for me personally, too, is I don't have the patience because I'm so used to being able to sit down and just go. You know what I mean? When I'm ready to work, I literally just grab pens and I'm immediately able to finish things. Even though I may have to work on them for a while, but what I'm saying is it's like there's no planning, there's no exploration, there's no, okay, that didn't work, I need to redo that. So it's kind of all reward when you're inking, and it's just got a different vibe. I have the video in my playlist though. I have yet to watch it, but I saw the video. Yeah, it's really worth checking out, and I think just generally speaking, what I found with Jim's Twitch videos, and I've watched maybe 8 to 10, so not a ton. And when I say watch, generally I mean work and listen and look up at key moments. But there's all kinds of really great little tidbits that he says along the way. So I think that any of them have a value. Oh, but what I was going to say is, so I saw an argument online a few weeks ago with two people. Neither I don't think was a professional. I could be wrong about that, but they were arguing about what makes you learn better, doing lots of drawings or doing less drawings that are more thoughtful. And this would be my experience with that. I'll try to explain it a little bit better. But the one person was basically saying, like, you're better off just drawing like 1,000 hands, no matter how you set them up, no matter what process you use, no matter how bad they turn out. Quantity will eventually equal quality. The other person was like, no, 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 no. You'd be better off drawing one hand and spending an hour on it and really working it out, getting it to look nice, and understanding what you did to draw that one hand. And then if you could well, I'm throwing this part in, but then if you could repeat that same hand, you would have actually gotten more value out of it, because you could literally spend years just grinding through thousands and thousands of unthoughtful drawings and really not be progressing, because you're just, one day you start with the thumb, one day you start with a little scribble of the whole fist. None of them are really turning out well. You're not really finishing any of them. You're just doing reps with no sort of rhyme or reason. And I would argue, based on my own personal experience with the the two approaches, you're better off sitting down and trying to learn something specific than just knocking out thousands and thousands of drawings with no sort of intent behind them. It's kind of the equivalent of running around a basketball court and just throwing hundreds of balls towards the basket, and not really trying to figure out what maybe would give you a little bit better form. You know what I mean? It's like you're throwing it over your shoulder. You're not, you're leaping and throwing. I mean, I think it all would help, but I think you'll learn more exponentially by starting something with a purpose, working it out, and then finishing it, than doing just massive reps with no form. So yeah, watching his videos, it's like Jim just stays awake until he's done, but otherwise doesn't swear with time. I'm impressed by his speed too. Like, even though I've worked around Jim, it's incredible to me that he can knock out most pieces within 4 to 6 hours. I mean, I think that that's a really, really cool thing. It's encouraging, and I'm not saying that everyone would need to work that way, but I like the idea that you can do a cover in like 6 hours and have it look good. And another person that comes to mind, even though I don't know his speed, would be like Mark Silvestri. I always kind of think of Jim and Mark as somewhat similar, because they both lay out their work, as far as I know, on the full page. They start and stop and erase and manipulate and do all the things that they can on the 11 by 17 board. Now, as a for instance, Adam Hughes, J. Scott Campbell, other artists that I've worked around or with, they'll work in a sketchbook, they'll work on other paper, they do different iterations of the drawing and try different things, and then they'll lightbox. They'll blow it up to the size that they want, and they lightbox it, which is probably more common now with people using digital tools, meaning they're laying it out in Clip Studio or Photoshop or 3D Studio Max, whatever programs that you use, and Poser, you know what I mean? People use all that shit stuff. And you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't want that many steps in my process personally, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be a process that could work great for someone else. I like Pascal. I can't think of what his last name is. I think his first name is Pascal. He's a digital artist that does these very kind of Corbin-esque, like, digital paintings. His stuff is all 3D models, and it looks cool. I'm seeing maybe a little bit of a limit for him right now, and I think that he'll have to push harder beyond that to get more creative. Like, his drawings are very creative looking, but I think he's starting to become a little bit of a like, the tools are starting to kind of rule the execution. I've seen, there's another artist that does kind of a it's sort of H.R. Giger, Chris Cruxy. His name is, I think it's Necro something or other. Same thing with him. He hit a wall, and I could see where, like, all the 3D models and ZBrush sculpts and stuff that he was doing were starting to limit the pieces that he was able to do. They were still at a very, very high level, and it's the same with the Pascal artist. They're doing great looking work, but I can see that there's a limit and a repetition to what they're able to do. And then it circles back to that you have to be able to draw, you have to be able to create, you have to be able to go beyond just doing a mirror image of something or creating a 3D model of pipes and taking a poser model and moving it around until you get just the pose you want. It's a pretty tedious way to have to draw every single drawing that you do. Why not just draw? I mean, that's ultimately what you're kind of going for. But again, that's sort of a tangent. Right. Well, here you go. That's I. So, wait. Let me. Sorry, I don't want to skip your comment, Russ. I've been going through some of the classical atelier lessons, and I watched a video of Julia. I don't know who that artist is, doing a lesson on drawing an apple with cast shadows from her book because time lapse, and the apple looked perfect, but seemed like a useful exercise. Then she commented that she spent 40 hours on the drawing, and it really adjusted my thinking. Those of us that are still out here learning don't necessarily have a deadline, so we can't afford to spend a little more time learning on the page. It can be so hard to resist the need. Well, it was funny is I had a friend actually say that to me because I'm pretty open with what I think I'm good at and bad at, because it's like, why be in denial? And he suggested that because I've been so conditioned to have to deal with deadlines, that might be some of the reason that there's a sense of urgency with learning from me and trying to do things, because it's like I know the reality of what comics is, and very, very few people just get to do whatever they want and spend as much time as they want on it. Even if you're self-publishing, I think it's a fictional reality that people try to project on that. Look, if you're going to do your own book, you're not making money until the book. You can solicit the book, but then you still have an obligation to produce a 40-page book, a 50-page book, a 60-page book, a 100-page book, what it is. There's always ultimately a deadline, and if there's not, then you're going to start to piss people off around you. It's just the way that it goes, and people have expectations. You can't look, as an artist, you can't disappear for a year and not show art. It's a diminishing return, and there's hundreds of thousands of different options for people to get into. So sitting around on your thumbs and not producing art isn't really going to probably benefit you, my opinion. I tend to agree on the whole learning with traditional media. I think it's easier to adapt traditional skills to digital than the other way around. Oh no, it's 100% true. Just as a simple example, and I'm not being negative towards digital inking, but you could become a really good digital inker and really not have developed the skills that you need to do stuff traditionally. It's just the way that it goes. Just Stabilize alone, or a cross-hatching brush that you've downloaded from someone else's assets. It's, you know what I mean? Did you learn to cross-hatch? Did you learn to splatter? Did you learn to actually do tapered lines? Did you learn to feather? Did you learn to nail a line in one shot? It's difficult to say. So it's just something that these artists may face at some point. But if you only work digital, then it wouldn't matter. And that goes with any digital skill. I'm just using digital inking as a simple example. But it's like, if you can't draw a figure without a 3D model, and you can't light a figure without a 3D model, if you're at a comic book convention, someone asks you to draw a headshot, you may struggle with that because you don't know how to draw a head. You only know how to lightbox a head. So it's, that's something that each person will have to sort of face in their own, world. Taking a sip of coffee. I have the same issues with pencils in digital. When I erase, I start to lose the image in my head. Yeah, that happens to me too. And I stop thinking in 3D. With digital, what's interesting is when I work digitally on my Cintiq or even on my laptop with a Wacom tablet, it's almost like standing in front of a painting. I actually do get a better sense of three-dimensionality, and sometimes when I have a blank piece of white paper in front of me, it's a little harder to think 3D initially. But yeah, for whatever reason, when I'm looking at it on the like tilted, essentially it's the tilt of the monitor. You know, my Cintiq is at about a 45-degree angle, and obviously my monitor is straight up and down. And yeah, that helps me step back and kind of see things three-dimensionally a little bit better than just paper on a somewhat flat drafting table. The other issue I have with pencil and digital is I rush them because I don't respect them like I do traditional ink, because I know it can erase lines. One scene that's interesting for me is when I pencil stuff and I have to ink it, I rush both of them, because I rush the pencils because I think I'm going to do it in inks, and I'm kind of bored with the inks, so I rush through the inks. So it's like I've got it coming and going, where I go, well, you're going to ink this anyway, just like get enough of it down. You can work, you finish in the inks, and then I already feel like I've drawn it. So when I ink it, I'm like, meh. So what I've done, this is was my fix for myself, is I've completely remove the opportunity for me to ink anything that I draw right now. I'm only penciling stuff. I'll deal with inking it and the style that I'm going to ink it and all that stuff after I get the pencils done. It's just an easier way for me to work, because my pencils were being, you know, just it wasn't working with the idea that I was going to have to do both jobs back to back. So it's an interesting thing. But again, I'm talking about drawing pages, not sketches, too. Electric eraser is great for digging into detail. Yeah, I have a bunch of different erasers. I just don't use don't forget art is sculpting. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It 100% is sculpting, and oil painters constantly go over the work. It's part of the process. Inking is rendering a lockdown drawing. Exactly. If you're drawing your own book, the only person locking down a drawing is you. Well, and again, that's what I just kind of said, and that was the problem. Is I don't sculpt the sculpt long enough, and then when I ink it, I'm assuming that it's locked down, and so the two are like literally like oil and water. They're not mixing. Inking is your strength, so why not let the creativity come out in that part of the process? Loosen the pencils, let the ink flow. I get impatient with the ink, though, so we'll see. Ah, damn, I'm literally having the same problem as Jim as I'm watching this video. Oh, yeah, I remember reading this. I'm working on a drawing right now. I'm erasing the lower leg over and over trying to get it right. Thanks for posting this. Came at the exact right time. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. What's frustrating for me is that I know the anatomy good. I just don't work with it enough. It's an interesting thing. So this is something I figured out about a year ago, and I now regard my erasers as equally important tools as my pencils. I saw a really funny. It was looking at an animation book 2 days ago, and it had a photo of a pencil, and it said "Animator's pencil. Use both ends," and it was, you know, the sharpened end and the eraser end. I thought that was pretty funny. My drawings have gone in quality dramatically. I'm in the middle of editing a YouTube video right now where I mention this very thing, and I don't think everyone understands the importance of it. Love your channel videos, by the way. Thank you. I watch your stuff all the time and repeatedly. Great, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'll subscribe to your channel as soon as this video is over. Yeah, so thanks for this video, Rich. I totally relate. It's only recently that I'm trying to read these fast, and then I'm crashing and burning, that I've become braver in erasing, partly because I'm practicing on the iPad and Procreate. I hear what you're saying, though, about being that brave on paper. Most of my life up until, well, and see, that's the thing, too, is I have all these things that I know can go wrong. Like if I draw a big figure in the middle of the page, and I get the poses looking cool, and all of a sudden I realize, oh, shit, I want it up 2 inches to the right and then over a little bit, and then I kind of want to move the arm a little bit. I know that traditionally that is going to be harder to do, but I think that there's rewards with traditional that you're not going to get digitally. What I'm finding is there's a digital stiffness to people that lay out stuff digitally. I don't want to get into that now, but I actually have pointed it out to a few people that are really good artists, and they were pretty down with my theory on it. But yeah, when you lay stuff out digitally and you're able to move all the pieces around to get them just perfect, it actually does start to create a level of stiffness in the drawing that probably isn't noticeable to everyone, but I can see it in sequential pages. I can see it in covers and stuff like that. Everything is too neatly placed. The size relationships are all working, but it starts to look a little anemic. It's a very subtle thing, but I'm sure that there's people here that can pick up on it too. Todd was just talking about this in his, but there's no right or wrongs. Like someone could do it great and totally be the exception to the rule. So all I'm saying is these are observations that I've made. It doesn't mean that I'm right. It's just my opinion. On top of the fact that it's just an observation, and everyone is different. So there's a lot of factors involved. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you see these pros sketch at shows and stuff like that, Todd Knock, any of them, if they've been drawing for 15, 20 years, they're really, really good, and they've got a lot of experience under their belt. Yeah, and he's referring to that. It makes sense that because I'm trying to get my lines right the first time, I'm thinking that you have a little trouble making adjustments in the Ticom and pencil. Yeah, it's just I don't want to do it. I don't want to take stuff away. My phone is beeping in my pocket. Always be happy with the gestures before moving forward. Great advice. As you can see, Jim was happy before having a second, then a third, then yeah. It was really interesting. I kid you not, I've been the same way. Sure enough, it was from watching Jim Lee. Yeah. Stanley said he never saw Kirby. I remember replying this yesterday. Um, so Stanley said he never saw Kirby use an eraser. Again, this is what I would say is a lot of these mythos about artists and their approaches and stuff like that, they get sort of filtered through, rose tinted glasses and fan stuff. I assure you that there were times when Jack Kirby used an eraser. I'm sure there were many times when Jack Kirby didn't use an eraser. It's like there's no one thing. If Jack drew something that he didn't like, he either changed it. Or, you know what I mean? It's like no one is flawless. So even as great as Kirby was, I like Travis would erase all the time, even at his best, or he would sit there with a blank page and just really kind of think it out. So you know, all these guys erase. Don't let it. You know, don't let these stories. It's like Frazetta. Frazetta would you know he said a lot of stuff about his work that wasn't always as accurate as probably some of the processes that he used. So thanks for your honesty and humanity. Yeah, no problem. It was scary. Well, it wasn't scary posting the video up, but when I saw it was getting a lot of views and a lot of comments, it did make me nervous. Though I was like, oh man, what's going on? Hey Rich, still have a drawing that you did for me years ago. Yeah, I when I watched this yesterday, I still have that Clerks videotape in my closet. Believe it or not, it's funny because I can picture you. I think you wrote the Clerks name on it in blue Sharpie. It's the only videotape that I have that actually has blue Sharpie. But yeah, no, I totally remember that, and thank you for the video. And I can't even imagine what the picture looks like that I drew for you in Miami. That was a long time ago. That's the farthest I've ever gone for a convention too, if I'm not mistaken. I noticed most artists not afraid to erase. Even 30 to 70% of the work are more prolific. Could be. They're not afraid to redo, so it's actually more mileage for their hand, which is damn admirable and enviable. And again, like I constantly, when I think of Jim, I always think of Silvestri, and I love the fact that Jim shares so much of his process online. But I'm such a big fan of Silvestri too. I would absolutely love to see him draw a page or cover. It would be so cool. Nice video, man. Yeah. Thank you, PLO Jay. I'll have information up soon about this for you. Okay. And thanks for asking. I do appreciate it. I wonder how the people are going to take all the erasing. He's using the Cubert paper. It's a pretty thick Bristol. But yeah, the only paper that you would really have trouble erasing things multiple times would be a cheaper Bristol or like a typing paper. Great advice. Thanks, Rich. Yeah, no problem. So it's artist Michael refers to Stato, and yes, it's a manga artist, Japanese artist. Look on YouTube. So I was gonna look this up too because I was curious about that, even all of it. Yeah, I mean, I've seen Jim erase full drawings, so I'm currently trying to get back into traditional after painting digitally for quite some time, and it's hard. Not only do I have serious commitment problems when it comes to drawing, which is one of the big reasons I want to go back traditional And oh, is this one? Yeah, this is okay. I'm gonna expand on this perfectionist thing here in a second. So I'm currently trying to get back into traditional after painting digitally for quite some time, and it's hard. Not only do I have a serious commitment problems, or not only do I have serious commitment problems when it comes to drawing, which is one of the big reasons I want to go back to traditional and train to be more accepting of slight flaws instead of relying on Control Z so much. Being too perfectionistic can be detrimental for my productivity. So here's the deal that I'm gonna say about this, because I was watching a thing with Neil Gaiman the other day, and he was talking about writers using the term artists or writer's block, and I'm gonna paint a picture of artists use this word perfectionist in the same light, and I think this is going to help a lot of people. So Neil will get letters from people, emails, blog posts, where people write paragraphs and paragraphs about how they have writer's block. They're stuck. They don't know what to do with the character. They don't know how to do the story. They're stuck on something. And ultimately what it boils down to is they don't have the toolbox to fix or adjust what the issue is. They don't have writer's block. They don't have a solution to the problem. Being a perfectionist is an excuse that I've used for many, many years with my own work. I'm a perfectionist. Nothing looks good enough to me. Well, why doesn't anything look good enough to you? Well, for me personally, it boils down to I don't have the problem solving skills to get the pieces how I want it. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I wouldn't be a perfectionist if I knew how to draw a hand at some funky angle, you know, or whatever it is. I'm not saying that this refers to you, but be careful of using the word perfectionist just in general, because ultimately probably what's going on is you don't have the experience to pull off what you were trying to do. You don't have the education to do what you need to do, meaning that you don't know the technique, you don't understand the structure well enough to put it at the angle that you need to draw it at. You don't know how to light it, whatever it is. And that's probably kind of more what's going on than you're such a perfectionist, because there's probably plenty of things, like Neil was saying, these people, they can write paragraphs and paragraphs about how they're having trouble writing. So they clearly don't have writer's block. What they have is they're having technical issues with their writing ability, their content, you know. So it's the same with artists. We're probably, most of us, you can call it perfectionism, but essentially what it is that you don't know how to work it out to the level that you would be satisfied with. So at least for me, that's what it is. So also mixing colors and getting the right consistency for ink and paint is much more complex than picking colors digitally. Like, I know what color combinations look good when it comes to my art and message, but getting that point across when the paint is just right is ridiculously hard for me. Drying times and touching wet paint, yeah, all that stuff can be tricky. I think working on this will make me stronger and more productive in the long run, even though it might suck a little to suck so much. Yeah. Well, you know, what's the old saying? Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forward. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a long post. When I had done the other video, you know what I mean? It's difficult for me to read this much in a video, so I actually prefer it. He preferred it before all the second guessing. The knee and the hip makes for a powerful blow with triangle forces framing the area of interest. And note that Jim isn't simply fiddling with anatomical parts, but is altering the basis of the composition by introducing a major diagonal structure. Good points. That's the sort of thing that should be well established in the foundation of the piece. And notice how weak the overall feeling is with the revised bent twisted leg. So I'd call that missing the mark. I can't remember what the finished piece looks like, honestly, so I'd have to look back at it to see which looks better. But the main realization that you're promoting is to erase or not to erase. On one hand, on a surface level, the question itself is absurdly ridiculous clickbait. Dude, that's what YouTube is all about. The title, yeah, I mean, look, I'm trying to get people to view the videos, but the message behind it is, you know, there'll be other clickbait titles. Spoiler, spoiler alert. But on the other hand, I think it taps into something fundamentally deeper, which puts a priority on expression over production. Before continuing, it ought to be recognized that in essence, to be creative is to be a rebel. It's having the sheer audacity to say, yeah, I see what you're doing, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to do it my way. Of course, such boldness is not without risk, taking some courage, as that kind of liberated disposition of dissension can get one thrown out of Patreon or Discord despite your contribution. However, the main artistic and life lesson to be learned there is that you don't need permission to erase or otherwise express yourself with your very own unique voice. And in fact, history repeatedly shows that the most successful artists follow the beat of their own drummer. Until you get that, you're doomed to be lost and forgotten imitation before you can even begin. Okay. But as for erasing and genuine expression, style, as observed by Portasio and many others, amounts to your flaws, your individual quirks. That's what character is. Right. My point for erasing is more the fact that like, if I'm not finishing drawings and I'm getting stuck on drawings, or I'm abandoning drawings because I'm not erasing, that's where it's problematic. I mean, all this stuff about ultimately having a style or being a rebel isn't really what I was talking about, but it's like, you know, I know that that's more on your mind. And then he goes on to say that he's not a huge fan of Jim's style. I kind of read through this a little bit on the last one. So yeah, setting aside the safety net of second guessing, Eraser affords you the freedom to be daring, to explore and potentially uncover hidden treasures within. Mastery in any skill, any successful living, is unmistakably recognized as ability to improvise, to stand and deliver with cool, effortless grace. And then I think there's a reply that he did to his own comment. Yeah, and you know I tend to speak in extremes, Rich, for clarity, because contrast brings things clearly into focus. So self-editing and correction is definitely a valid part of the creative process. Right, well, and again, I'm talking about being able to finish drawings. And if for some reason you're getting stuck on drawings and you're abandoning drawings, then it's important to erase and to try things again and again until you get them right. You work in a different technique. I don't know how many full pinups and cover type pieces you've done where you've actually hammered it out all like from your memory. I'm not positive, but I based on what you had shown me. So there's less erasing for you, but there's more adjusting, you know, as you prepare your piece. So but there's a point where one begins to edit a work to death. Well, I'm just talking about erasing more than once or twice, which I rarely even was doing that, to the point where one loses perspective on what they're trying to achieve. That, I think, would make for an interesting meditation and discussion. At what point do you leave well enough alone, or scrap it, or start over? Well, and again, and I've worked with artists who are, you know, I'll use the word so much perfectionists, that they do stop drawing, you know, and that's no good. So it's all a balancing act. So I saw your video title plus thumbnail and went, dude, same. Awesome. I seem to recall Jim redrawing Superman's right fist quite a few times as well. Yeah, you know, whatever he's not seeing that works, he will adjust, I think. Sketching with ink, no erasing. Yeah, I want to do this. It's funny because there's some artists from the 70s. You know, I know now there's more of a focus on you know, Kim Jong-gi or people that are influenced by that technique. But you know, I mean, people have been drawing in pen and ink and sketching for a long time. But that's something that I definitely want to start doing more. You know, just grabbing a very thin brush or something like that, and doing some, you know, figure drawing and doodles and little moments of characters and stuff that I have. I think it'll be really fun, and I'm curious to see how that style combines with a penciling style. I erase all the time, but because I messed up. Jim here erases because he didn't like the angle. Right. Well, it could be either way, you know. I mean, you know, whatever your specific scenario is for each drawing, because every drawing is going to be different. That's the thing. If you have to work out a drawing, you're trying to do a pinup with you know, 5 characters in it. There could be ultimate multiple reasons why you need to erase something, because you messed up or because you didn't like a position of something. So it can go both ways, but either post could have worked and we'd accept it as is. However, he didn't like it and reworked it. He felt he could do better and redid it. What I get from that, no matter how good and well respected, you can always strive to be better. Thanks, Rich, for your time and effort you put in your channel. Much appreciated. Yeah, no problem. I watched this during the live stream and had the same exact revelation. Even Jim Lee doesn't always get it right on his first try. Sometimes he has to draw the same hand like 15 times. I know. I mean, like I said, that's very, very encouraging to me. And again, I immediately start to think of Silvestri, and I'm like, I wonder how much Silvestri has to erase. He's a big X factor for me because I think he's one of the best image artists. And he just draws so good. And he's got a lot of influences I like. He's a big fan of Frazetta, Buscema, Bernie Wrightson. I mean, it's like, it's right in my wheelhouse of like what I consider pretty awesome. Okay, I'm a raceaholic. Yeah, this was funny. Oh, and it's Matt, too. Yeah, Matt, thanks very much for your reply. And Matt's a very, very talented artist. You guys should all follow him because he's a terrific penciler. And, dude, you've just gotten better and better. And I'm not just saying that, but, I mean, I've seen your work over the last, like, 4 or 5 years. You've really, really gotten good. So you have a bunch of different erasers. I do too. I just don't use them. And recently, while drawing, I was struggling on a pose that I kept redrawing and erasing. And as I began to get frustrated, I said to myself, "Isn't it supposed to get easier after all these years?" Then it dawned on me: if it's getting easier, it's only because I'm not trying to draw new things. And that's 100% true. And I actually said this when I recorded the other video to you. I don't practice anything that I know how to do already. So, like, for me, one thing that I will never, ever draw in my sketchbook right now, I never draw profiles of heads. I don't need to. I've got that down. There's other things, like I don't do straight-on shots. I don't do the chests and the arms at front views. I don't do any of that stuff because I don't need to. And it's so I definitely am working on what I consider very hard poses. And what's interesting is the poses and stuff that I'm always trying to work out of my head, which is pretty much how I draw, well, I would say 95% of the time. The only time I grab books out right now is actually to force myself to pick up a few new things. But other than that, I find, like if I want to draw someone swinging a club, and I want them completely off balance. I mean, I want the hips torqued. I want the arm swinging in front of the head. I want it up above the head. I want the other arm flinging in another direction. I'll sit and I'll draw that 20 or 30 times until I start figuring out what exactly that pose will take. I should actually, one thing that I'm reminding myself to do is actually try to do the pose, because it's one thing that I don't do. I tend to just sort of keep drawing the gesture and see if I can work it out that way, and also putting weight on things. But yeah, I don't really practice stuff that I know how to do, and that is part of the frustration that I have, is like, you know, if I'm trying to draw heads now, I'm trying to draw them at like some weird upshot or whatever. It's like, can I get the nostrils to work? So I thought that was a really good comment, Matt, because I think I can relate to what you're saying. And being a pencil guy, I find that I do the same thing when inking. I use a lot of white to cover and correct old lines. That's good, though, you know. And Jim uses a ton of white out. You see him on those more 1 hour sketch things. He goes in and grinds through a ton of white. So super. Thank you, Alvaro. Great episode. Part of why I fell in love with ink is the commitment of it. That started to change my outlook, coupled with getting real world work and finding equations to make it measure. It gets easier to rush things and attempt a fix in post. Right. Well, and see, in post for me is I'll go like, well, if I'm going to ink this, I'll kind of rush through the pencils. But then I get impatient with the inks because I'm like, oh, God, like ink? Really? Now I got to ink this thing? Sounds weird, but it's like I want to see it done. I'm not an impatient artist, but for whatever reason, if I'm doing a comic book page or a comic book piece, comic being the key word, I find myself thinking of a timeline for it, and I think that's why I took out the that I'm not inking my own stuff right now. Not at all. Zero. So you only see pencils from me for a while. Bless your heart, Rich. I used to do that too around 20 years ago. That was a great post. Thumbs up. I'll thumbs up everyone. But anyway, who the hell would downvote this? Rich is being so real with y'all. Thanks. Yeah, you want fake ass video games? Go elsewhere, right? That's funny. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is I thought, it was something that I really thought watching that video. I was like, God dang, why the hell are you not doing this? And so, I thought, well, people like the honesty of it. So, past videos I've done. So I was like, I'm just gonna say it. So, this is more than just erasing, though. It's more like self-editing, and Jim is really good at this. No, I totally agree. To be able to see mistakes you are making is pretty hard for most artists, and usually requires an educated critique before they can see it clearly yourself. I totally agree with that too. I'm at the point though where I can actually critique myself, though, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying that I actually am, and so the thing is my problem stems from a lack of patience, and stupid approach. The better you get at self-editing your art, the better as an artist you'll be. That is where Jim's 30 years of experience comes in and really helps him. He's really thinking about more than just the leg anatomy and proportions are. He's fixing the composition of the leg with the rest of the picture, any tangents that can creep up. And someone disagreed with the assessment that his fix was an improvement in the total visual impact. If you have time to erase and fix things, then you should do it, and I agree with that. I think we get caught up in the stories of Jack Kirby never erasing because of the type of production he had to be in just to get the books out on time. Then we make that gold standard of skill, right, off skill, right, and it's really just a fantasy. And I agree, and like I said, I'm one of the hugest Frazetta fans ever, and he perpetuated that with himself. And if you ever watch the Paint with Fire video, most of the people that talk about him, it's like they feed that fire. So if you're a young artist inspired by Frazetta, you might kind of think that the reality of what he was doing, which was truly incredible, and then the mythos of it, it all turns into this, like, it's like Frank would he would paint a painting in 2 hours, and he didn't even use paint, and like he had brushes and both hands, and I know that that's not the stuff they say about Frazetta, but you know what I mean. Like, it can get pretty insane. Travis has that with him. There's a lot of people that tell stories about how Travis worked, and I saw him work, and some of them are incorrect, but I'll just let people have their fun with that. Consistently putting out your best work and on time is a much higher skill than how you got there. No, I agree. I mean, and then that goes for if you're going to work for a company, if you're going to work for a video game company, if you're going to self-publish. Ultimately, there's a deadline for everything, and you're going to need to be consistent with the level of art you produce, and you're going to need to deliver whenever you commit to it. If you commit to doing one book a year of your creator-owned thing, you need to get it out, and if you don't, you'll hear it from your fans, and it doesn't mean you're going to lose them, but there's always a level of accountability that you have as an artist, and it's just the reality of doing art and having fans. So there's a mentality across the art world that holds not erasing up as a sign of mastery of craft. I agree. Yes, it's impressive when a good drawing is made with minimal or no erasing, and while that style method is totally valid and fun, it's not a good mindset for everyone, especially if you have deadlines. It's not the end-all be-all, and it doesn't make you any less of an artist if you erase, white out, or use Control-Z. Same with reference. If you don't know what something looks like, get reference. It's worse if you try to guess. Right, exactly. Totally agree. Another really good artist that erases a lot is Yusuke Murata, the One Punch Man artist. Look at his live streams on YouTube. He draws fast and erases things you would think look fine. Ooh, I will definitely check that out too. That sounds really cool. You should be done and you should be moving on. Yes, this goes through my head with basically every drawing I do. But it's nice to see that even Lee doesn't get everything right on the first pass. Yeah, and he fought for it. I think I'm hoping that over time he posts more full pencil pieces as opposed to the more commissiony things, because I do find him doing the finished pencils really interesting, at least for my own selfish reasons. So in his video for Another Page of Action, I watched that video too. You have to have the confidence that if you can draw it once, you can draw it again. And for a long time, this is years ago, I did suffer from that, where I would be terrified if I got something even remotely looking decent to erase it, because I didn't have the confidence or the experience to be able to get it to look as good again. So sometimes you just get lucky and you just I keep thinking of like a hand at like a weird angle where you've got the fingers tucking in, and you're not seeing it like a fist from a front view, but like more the pinky side, and like you just get lucky, and maybe like a line goes down, and you go, oh man, that actually kind of looks like what I want, and you know that if you erase it, you're going to put it at some stiff angle that's going to make the finger look weird, and all of a sudden the whole fist looks funky, and then you go down that rabbit hole of spending an hour trying to work out a hand, because you can't figure out. Again, this was more of an old thing. I would just take a photo of my hand now and be able to nail what I'm trying to emulate. You know what I mean? It's not a bad way. I mean, you've got your phones now, so don't be afraid. Like, if you need to draw someone like screaming, just snap a quick photo of yourself screaming and look at like what your mouth does, look at the lines that your face creates and stuff like that, and you don't have to lightbox it, but just it'll give you some cues of like how your forehead wrinkles. And the same with a hand. If you need to draw a hand at a weird angle, like, I mean, don't sit and try it and try it and try it over and over again if you're not having any luck. Just snap a photo of it at approximately the angle that you want, and you'll be able to see what the fingers are doing and what the creases do and where the knuckles sit, so I learned this technique by watching him as well. Spend more time getting the overall gesture right. It was a powerful video for me for a few reasons. Get the overall gesture right before rendering. Yeah, see, exactly. So you don't lose time making a big mistake. Erasing a lot is great. Quality assurance. Yeah, and I like that. I like that he laid the piece out. He started to think about it in terms of big forms, like kind of the Bridgman thing. He started to light the big shapes. Then he started to refine areas, and then at the very end, that was when the rendering came in and really started to, finish the level of value and kind of compositional detail that he wanted to move through it. So I thought it was a well built up piece. He didn't have like a finished head here, and then an object here that was really rendered, and then stuff that was just like didn't know. You know what I mean? It's a risky way to work. You can paint yourself into a corner where you've spent a lot of time on something that doesn't work. Preach, brother. I had a similar aha moment upon revisiting art after high school. Nothing serves an artist more than actually seeing every idea through. If you start it, finish it. That is 100% true. Finish all the things that you work on, and you will learn everything you can from it. That's honestly the takeaway from this video. If you wanted to really do anything, is see every idea through. If you start it, finish it, period. That's it. It doesn't matter if you have to erase it or what, but work a piece out to the best extent that you can and finish it, and then move on to the next piece. If you have 500 drawings that are not finished, whether or not you stopped when they were looking good, you didn't learn as much as you would from finishing one that ultimately didn't end up as good. It sounds like like it's like a saying that people will say, like, but it actually is true. You'll grow exponentially from finishing things. Your voice is similar to Jim's voice. That's funny. My friend says I sound like Dave Grohl. I don't know, man. I have a different perspective. This is something the compositionally should have been done in the early concept ages, right? And possibly with construction lines, and too many veteran artists develop the warped view that construction lines are for amateurs. Then they rely on rote memorization of key forms. That kind of method locks you into a style you can never get out of until you go back to the basics. So why abandon the basics to begin with? It would be one of those things where like I mean, it sounds good, and you could be right, and it could work for a lot of people. It's like every artist will kind of have a different approach to it, and I don't know if it's necessarily a veteran thing or if it's just an artist thing, but if you're getting good results from the way that you do it, then I think that's the best thing. And then look, it's good to have that information out there so people can try it different ways. Inking digitally not only gives you the opportunity to redo, perhaps by throwing a line from a different angle, etc., but also manipulating the line once it's down. I speak here specifically of lines drawn on a vector layer in Clip Studio Paint. The app is really a revelation. Well, it's cool. I'm glad that you enjoy it. So let's see. It's probably your subconscious ego telling you you're too good to erase. It doesn't feel that way. It just feels like I'm impatient, being 100% honest, but definitely it's not ego. I can assure you of that. But I would say that I leaned on the, like, I'm a perfectionist for way too long, and that wasn't the case. It was, I didn't have the patience or the ability or the experience to get things how I wanted. So the stuff wasn't turning out perfect because of me, not because of some belief system that I have, and that I'm very discerning of what art is good. So it's a slight difference, but probably more of a reality of what was going on. Hey Richard, I'm glad you made a video like this. No problem. Hopefully this one is good for you too, and hopefully you made it through it. Um, so I was sorry. I saw Peter Palmiotti's thing. Hi Peter, how are you doing? I went through a period of never erasing as well. I used a non-photo blue pencil to sketch basic form and structure, followed by a 4H lead mechanical pencil to fine tune, followed by either a 2B, 4B lead pencil or micron to finish the image. From there, it's just a matter of scanning the image into my PC. The scanner didn't pick up the rough sketch non-photo markings and could also be calibrated in a way not showing the slightly darker 4H markings, but I've since moved on to a Wacom pen display in Photoshop, and I erase all the time. Go figure. That's funny. Yeah, blue pencil, I love drawing with blue pencil. I hate drawing over blue pencil. When I have to start to tighten up a drawing and I've put blue pencil down, I find it really difficult and kind of like laying too much of a perspective grid down. It's like all those lines start to distract me from what, like, the thing that I'm trying to project onto the page and draw. But I love drawing digitally. I really do. I think it's great. So I've got a wonky forum that I've been working on for the last 6 years. This was funny reply. See a doctor. uh, Hopefully you really haven't been working on a drawing for 6 years, and if so, shoot some reference for it or find a photo that's a similar pose. You got to finish that drawing and move on to the next one. 6 years is too long, I'm going to tell you. I appreciate your tenacity on that piece, though. And then Peter is an inker, and so being an inker like yourself for many years, I expect my pencils to be finished from the start. Yeah, it's a weird thing, but yes, I'm finding with myself, I've gone back to the basics and start with foundation first. Exactly. So okay, cool. We got through them all. My last video I didn't. I started with newest first, like this, and I went from the top down, and I got to about here, but said it was such a bummer. I think I got to right in here somewhere. Yeah, so this was better. I mean, I was able to go through the whole thing. Maybe it's like I'm trying to compensate in my mind for the disappointment of losing the video, because that was a bummer. I couldn't really get mad about it because it was so far gone. It's not like an inking video where you lose the audio and you could just upload it, you know, with no audio, or speed it up or something and do a voiceover. There was no point. So, okay, have a great day. I may or may not be back with Super Fun Sunday tomorrow. We're going to crack 10,000 probably today or tomorrow here. I'm at 9,980-ish, whatever. But I can't thank you all enough for coming here, and yeah, it's just Thanksgiving publishing deadline. I need to get a bunch of stuff in by Monday. So tomorrow I probably am going to be working, but I can make up for it next week and throw in a Super Fun Sunday style video Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So, all right, have a great day. Smash the like, and thank you so much. And hopefully this was fun hearing other people's experiences with this. So, all right, have a great day. Bye.